Hello and welcome to this edition of Africa Today, which will focus on the security crisis in Africa's Great Lakes region amid accusations and counter-accusations among regional countries. We are looking at some of the major protagonists in this crisis, mainly affecting the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. In this edition, we are also analyzing the situation in Mali after the country's parliamentary elections and the future of this West African state that has been plagued by conflict over the past few years. I'm your presenter, Mubarak Kenya, and joining me is my colleague.
Hello, I am Sheila Nelima, bringing you news and views from all over Africa. And of course, I read your comments from social media this week about Hood's Day, so stay tuned.
Africa Great Lakes crisis. President Paul Kagame of Rwanda recently accused Burundi of sending troops to fight in an armed conflict in both countries' western neighbor, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda alleges that Burundi is backing a rebel group known as the Rwandan Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, operating in eastern DRC. The stated objective of the FDLR is to return to Rwanda and topple President Kagame. In a video press conference late April, Kagame told journalists that Burundi government forces are operating in eastern DRC, where FDLR forces are carrying out attacks.
Recently, you saw the FDLR laid an ambush on this road in areas of Ruchuru. They killed these guards who work in Virunga, massive on the DRC side. There was only one mention once and about, some FDLR, some rebels from Rwanda having killed people, and that was it.
Paul Kagame's remarks came in reaction to accusations raised since mid-March by Congolese opposition politicians and civil society groups that Rwandan troops were leading military operations in the eastern DRC's Rutshuru territory against the FDLR rebels. Meanwhile, Burundi's president spokesperson Jean-Claude Karerwa denied the claims by President Kagame. For more on the unfolding situation in the Africa's Great Lakes region, we contacted Lawrence Freeman, a political and economic analyst for Africa who has been involved in the economic development policy of Africa for the past 30 years. Thanks a lot, Mr. Freeman, for your time. Now, is another conflict brewing in the Africa's Great Lakes region, and who are the major protagonists?
I think there is a potential for flare-ups, but at this time, I don't believe we're actually going to have a military conflict. I think a number of the nations in the region are trying to work together to prevent such a conflict from occurring.
Lawrence Freeman, African Affairs Analyst.
After taking office in early 2019, the Democratic Republic of Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi expressed his resolve to eliminate Congolese and foreign armed groups wreaking havoc in the crisis-ridden east of the country. Addressing the 74th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, Tshisekedi admitted that his country faces a great challenge in restoring peace.
The greatest challenge that Congo faces at the moment is peace, security and stability. Since my investiture, I have been convinced of the absolute need for peace, and therefore we have worked without reserve to achieve this objective, taking into account the regional and international dimension. With this in mind, last July at the 39th summit of SADC in Dar es Salaam, I proposed that we create a regional coalition like the global counterterrorism coalition to eradicate the scourge of insecurity created by armed groups coming from either within or outside the country.
Is President Tshisekedi doing enough to eliminate Congolese and foreign armed groups in the eastern part of the country?
The current president of the Congo is under difficult circumstances. And I think he is trying to. I think the problem is much bigger than he can handle at the moment. The history of the problem, of the conflict in the Congo, goes back 10, 20, and 100 years in terms of the policies that have prevented the Congo from becoming a sovereign state. And it does not have control, complete control, over all its territories. And that is the difficulty at the moment.
The eastern part of the DRC is riddled with rebel groups and armed militia, despite the presence of MONUSCO, the United Nations peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is the UN's largest peacekeeping operation, with a 20,000-strong mission, which has been operating in the Central African country for the past 20 years.
Congolese people hold regular demonstrations calling for the withdrawal of UN troops, saying the international force has failed to assist in restoring peace in the country.
We're suffering a lot because of killing in Beni. We want UN to leave. I've lost my mother and father to the rebels. I'm the only survivor. The UN must go.
Why has the United Nations peacekeeping mission failed in its mandate of restoring peace in the DRC?
You have to keep in mind that the UN peacekeeping troops are peacekeeping troops. And in all the various conflicts that the UN troops have been deployed, you can only keep a peace if there already is a peace, and there's not. You have all kinds of forces that are manipulated by the outside of the Congo, in fact, internationally, that are operating in the area and that have been carrying out nasty operations going back decades. And therefore, the peacekeepers cannot be involved in settling these disputes. They can only keep a peace if there is one. And so therefore, the limitations of the peacekeeping mission itself are evident.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo is one of the least developed countries in the world, yet the country is also home to untapped mineral reserves estimated to be worth $24 trillion. Most of these minerals are in the eastern part of the country, where armed groups continue to roam with impunity. Amid the conflicts, these crucial minerals are mined and exported to Western countries and China. Patrice Lumumba, the leader of the Congolese independence movement, who resisted Belgian colonialism and Western cooperate interests, is believed to have been assassinated in a US-backed coup over 60 years ago. His assassination paved way for the massive looting of Congo's minerals.
Les complots étaient déjà faits. Les plans étaient déjà établis. C'est d'imposer un gouvernement contre la volonté du peuple. La Belgique désire balkaniser ce pays. L'éclatement du Congo, c'est demain.
Are Western industrialized countries involved in the perennial conflict in eastern DRC, considering its rich mineral deposits?
Yes, absolutely. If you go back to the time that Patrice Lumumba was elected the prime minister and took office in June of 1960, within a matter of 3 months, he was overthrown and eventually assassinated in January of the following year at the behest of international forces, the Belgian, the British, and the major commodity cartels. And since that time, the southeast corner of the Congo has been in turmoil because various international forces have wanted to loot the Congo of its rich mineral resources.
Regional countries have taken steps to establish sustainable peace in Africa's Great Lakes region through various initiatives. One of those is the International Conference on the Great Lakes region. This is an intergovernmental organization bringing together 12 countries in the African Great Lakes region.
However, the activities of this organization are threatened by member states failing to meet their financial obligations, thus endangering peace efforts.
We still have not concluded our task of delivering a regional counterterrorism strategy due to a lack of funds. That really member states must step up and do their obligation, their duty that they pledged to do, and pay up.
What steps should be taken to avert the looming conflict in eastern DRC?
This will require a much bigger effort than just the Congo. What essentially you need is a peace through development policy, which has to involve the major nations of the world, China, United States, probably Russia, and others, to ensure that there's massive economic development and infrastructure. The Congolese are the Congo is one of the most undeveloped nations on the planet. It needs electricity, it needs railroads, it needs cities, it needs industrialization, it needs a manufacturing sector. It has enormous potential for an agricultural sector.
And now in this segment of our program, my colleague is ready to present you with news and events from across Africa. What do you have today, Sheila?
Thank you, Henia. Welcome to this part of the program. It's time to bring various news from all around Africa. To start us off this week, data from World Travel and Tourism Council revealed that Seychelles, Cape Verde, Mauritius, Gambia and Namibia are the African countries predicted to suffer most due to the economic damage in the industry's lockdown. This is because the said countries rely on tourism industry for more than 15% of their country's total employment share. Now, in currency matters, the French government officially approved the end of the CFA franc. 8 West African states will now be using a new currency, the ECO. The Bank of France will no longer co-manage or hold half of the currency reserves. The new currency is still surrounded by controversy by the West African bloc and may take time to be introduced. Now on to the Nile Dam project. The leaders of Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan announced the new attempt to reach an amicable solution ahead of the completion of the dam. They stated that they shall complete the remaining part of the agreement on the technical terms as earlier agreed during past discussions. Now, in other news, Tanzania became the first African country to open its skies. It further announced that tourists would not be required to undergo the mandatory 14-day quarantine. President Magufuli kept his word to keep the economy first. The Tanzania Tourist Board hopes to receive a tourism boom on the new development. Now, while to every cloud there is a silver lining, while prolonged lockdowns have caused havoc to most businesses, PaySpace, a tech company in South Africa, has recorded their strongest growth. They stated that they have seen an increase in demand amid the lockdown. PaySpace provides payroll software that aids in managing staff payments in a work-from-home setup. Now on to the African art scene. Music has yet again proved to be Africa's battlefront move against the COVID-19 pandemic. In marking Africa Today celebrations, the Africa Day benefit concert was held virtually to attract investments and encourage donations towards fighting COVID-19. Africa's best musical talents joined forces from all the corners of the continent. The concert is available online to encourage more pledges towards the funds. Now, this brings us to the end of this part. Visit our social media pages and follow us to interact with us. Stay tuned for more.
Mali after parliamentary elections.
Mali's Constitutional Court recently confirmed the results of the legislative elections, the second round of which was held in April. President Boubacar Keita's party won the most seats in the parliament, but not an outright majority. The government insisted on holding the elections despite the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to a record low turnout.
Un couvre-feu est également décrété, qui sera rigoureusement appliqué de 21h à 5h du matin. Ces élections se tiendront le 29 mars, c'est-à-dire ce dimanche, et ce, dans le respect scrupuleux des mesures barrières.
The ruling Rally for Mali (RPM), party of President Keita, took 53 of the 147 seats in the National Assembly. The election was meant to take place in late 2018 after Keita was re-elected, but was postponed several times, mainly because of threats posed by terrorists and armed groups roaming the vast West African country. The hope is that the newly elected parliament will approve changes to the constitution, promoting devolution and work towards sustainable peace.
Now, for more on the situation in Mali, we are joined by Gazi Kodzo, an African affairs activist. Thanks, Mr. Kodzo, for joining us. Now, what are the challenges facing the new government in Mali?
Well, first and foremost, there is no new government in Mali. It's just a change of puppets in the puppet parliament. You had Prime Minister Maja, and now you have Prime Minister Sisse in there, right? And they're going to do, Sisse's doing the same thing that Prime Minister Maja did, which was operate the puppet neo-colonial government of Mali for the interest of white power in the form of France. So France can continue to loot Mali for its natural resources. And the issue that the Mali puppet government is going to have is the same contradiction and problem and issue that all African countries have.
Gazi Kodzo, African affairs activist.
The elections have been held while there is little progress on the implementation of the agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali, resulting from the Algiers process.
Tuareg rebels signed an agreement giving them more autonomy. If it succeeds, it could end a cycle of Tuareg uprisings dating back to 1960 and Mali's independence from France.
This is the right opportunity for us in the CMA to say that peace is never won by a single signature alone.
Countries in the region have been affected by the stalling implementation of the agreement. There are calls for a new peace deal in Mali that will be more inclusive and realistic. What is hindering the implementation of the Mali peace agreement?
What's hindering the implementation is that it is not a peace agreement. It is a Mali looting agreement. It is an agreement that meets the interest of France. The only peace that agreement is concerned over is the peace of white power France to steal the resources of Mali peacefully, because that peace agreement says nothing about the toiling, poor working class, African colonized masses of Mali having power over their land, lives, and resources. These people who are starving day in and day out while their feet rest on the richest continent of the world. Why is Africa the richest continent in the world with the poorest people? Because Africa is being looted. That is exactly what that peace treaty.
Mali, one of the poorest countries in the world, suffers from attacks by several Takfiri terror groups and armed militant groups. This insecurity continues in the country despite the presence of French and UN peacekeepers that carry out counter-terrorism operations. The UN peacekeeping mission in Mali has been termed as the world's most dangerous. Many UN troops have been killed in peacekeeping operations in the country.
In the vast desert of northern Mali, soldiers from a distant land endeavour to maintain a fragile peace. In a country racked with conflict and instability, it's a daunting task. These men and women are part of a United Nations peacekeeping force called MINUSMA, the UN multidimensional integrated stabilization mission in Mali.
Despite the presence of French forces and UN peacekeepers, Mali continues to experience terrorist attacks. Why has it been difficult to defeat armed groups and terrorists in the country?
The real terrorist is France and the United States of America, because again, these peacekeepers, just like that false peace treaty, represents the peace of the colonizer, of white power, and not the peace of the people.
Thanks for that, and stay tuned.
Former colonial power France intervened in Mali in 2013 to drive out militants that had occupied parts of the country, and has since kept thousands of troops in the region as part of counter-terrorism operations.
pourquoi pas demain faire une patrouille l'après-midi, en fin de journée, à 5h30 après la prière, vous voyez, ces petits points clés qui font qu'on verra du renseignement différent si on fait toujours la même heure.
What are the interests of France in its Mali military intervention?
The interest of France is GOLD. Gold, gold, gold. That is the interest of France. That is the #1 export of Mali, is gold. Just recently, France experienced a 5.8 GDP decline in their economy, which was the greatest GDP decline since World War II due to the coronavirus. And now they want to escape inflation from cutting off these stimulus checks, just like America, to their billionaires, to their white ruling classes, because they're cutting off these billions and billions and trillions, and they have no material to back it up. So what hedges inflation? Gold. They want that gold to stop them from going into a Great Depression that the world has never seen before.
The security situation in the West African Sahel region has worsened as terrorist groups continue to destabilize Mali and other regional countries including Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and Mauritania. The upsurge in terrorist attacks compelled these countries to form the G5 Sahel group of nations to coordinate military and intelligence operations aimed at restoring security.
This strategy seems to have failed, and there are now calls for a new approach to deal with the ever-growing security threats.
Il nous faut travailler à ce que des victoires.
We must work together to ensure victory against terrorism in the short, middle and long term. As the case in other countries fighting terrorism, we need allies, an alliance characterized with responsibility, cooperation and respect for each other.
West Africa is facing an increasingly powerful set of terrorists, and this has drawn France deeper into the region. Why is the situation worsening instead of improving?
Well, first and foremost, I already told you why France is in Mali. They is in Mali not to fight terrorists, child. France can't even control their own terrorists in their shopping centers, let alone terrorists in Mali. They are in Mali because France is starving and needs gold.
Thanks for that, and stay tuned for more.
Welcome back. In this segment, we are going to look into our social media activities. In the episode highlighting Africa's support for Palestine, our viewers had this to say. From Facebook, we had Abdullahi Umar stating that, "I see the wind of hope for Palestine." Faisal Amir stated that Mahdi will soon appear, inshallah. Osman Ibrahim stated that, "My Palestinian support goes out to them." Farax Dahir sent in some images, one of Mandela with this message: "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestine." Abubak Awal also sent in an image. He added that, "We support Palestine and Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine. Downfall to the satanic Israel regime." Well, that's all from our viewers. Every comment and feedback is highly valued and appreciated. Again, visit our social media comments to interact with us. I'd like to ask you to send in pictures from where you live, from the special rituals and ceremonies you have in your area with some explanations. We will surely show them here for you.
And that wraps up this edition of Africa Today, as we look forward to a more peaceful and prosperous Africa. From me, Mubarak Kenya, it's goodbye for now.
And from me, Sheila Nelima, and the entire Africa Today team, goodbye and God bless.